books. Alan, can we ask you to come up and give us a few words? Alan, before you start, I'm getting in the neck for the secretary. It's not a few words. The man's here to speak.
Many words as you want.
As many words as you want.
Or as few.
Few.
Camera, you have to line yourself up for the cameras here. See, that's a point, by the way. This is getting videoed because we'll be sending it to put it on our website. The folk in Qatar, in America that we've got, in New Zealand, etc., etc., will be able to see what's happened tonight.
So you're an international star.
Thank you very much. Well, I want to start off, of course, by saying good evening, fellow Hibernians. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here in the Happy Hip Supporters Club. It's my second home for countless years. Tonight I'm here at the invitation of Big G, Gordon McKinley, and the St Patrick's branch of the Hibernian Supporters Association. I was hoping to be here in January, but doctors, surgeries, clinics and hospitals delayed things regarding a talk on my trilogy of books, The Making of Hibernian. I want to thank you for the get well card. It was very nice, very unexpected. I see Gordon's fingerprints all over it somewhere. Firstly, before we go any further, I really must congratulate the St Patrick's branch on their strenuous fundraising efforts to raise a long overdue marble cross over the grave of Dan McMichael here in the Eastern Cemetery off Easter Road. The ceremony being on Saturday the 7th of December last year. I thought it was an absolutely wonderful occasion. It will be long remembered. It was very expertly arranged and conducted by the St Patrick's branch. Really professional. And I felt it only appropriate that certainly my appreciation of what you achieved there. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Just another example of people power. Or it may never have happened. Not after all that time. It was great to see the members of the Michael family there. Don't know how you managed to arrange them all, but that was brilliant. Supporters, just like myself and yourselves. Of course, there was Mr. Petrie, Gary O'Hagan, and Terry Butcher, whose honeymoon is well and truly over. It was also great to see Pat Stanton there, of course. Now, I need hardly say how Pat and the supporters go hand in hand. He's a supporter himself, and he supports all occasions over the years I've known him. He's always willing to be there to show solidarity with our supporters. But possibly another reason Pat was there was that Dan McMichael actually signed one of Pat's great-granduncles, a guy called Jimmy Hendren. And Jimmy Hendren was top scorer for Hibs for about 3 years, I think it was, just before the First World War. So that was possibly another reason Pat was there, because old Dan McMichael had signed his great-granduncle. Jimmy had joined up the forces for the First World War very early on. But his wife had just given birth to a young baby, and Jimmy was given 6 weeks leave. And tragically he died, very young man. He died just a few weeks from his baby being born. Of course, another Hibernian great who was there was Sir Tom Farmer. As you all know, Tom was our saviour, our owner, and our guardian angel. Now, the reason Tom was there, probably, besides again showing solidarity for the efforts of the ordinary supporters, because remember when Sir Tom saved the club back in the early 1990s, he told us, it's your club, get on with it. And that's exactly what we're doing, and have been doing. Now, Tom Farmer's grandfather and great-granduncle, of course, were John and Philip Farmer. We know they done their life-saving act to the Hibs in the early 1890s. You know, it was repeated by Tom exactly 100 years later. You know, a real halo of romance that covers Hibernia. And John and Philip Farmer worked shoulder to shoulder with Dan McMichael for over, just under 20 years. Probably another reason that Sir Tom was there, because the Farmer brothers and Dan McMichael were very, very close. There's other trainer, director, Paddy Cannon, Owen Brannigan, Barney Lester, many others. They were all there together. The Farmer brothers and all his colleagues with Dan McMichael, they were known as the stony-faced Irish Mafia. They may have been stony-faced. The fact was they were very, very kind people, very unselfish people. As far as I know, what these people have mentioned, and there was many others, worked without any payment for it. It didn't matter if you were a director, a trainer, or whatever. It was the love of the club that kept it going, especially during the First World War. And Dan McMichael was certainly given a place of honour for his efforts to keep the club alive, because it nearly died in the First World War. It nearly died before, and he wasn't going to see it happen. I'd like to, if I may, just read a couple of tributes that I managed to find during my years of research. There were tributes to Dan McMichael when he died. Someone many years ago said that there were tributes from John and Philip Farmer, which could possibly be true, but I don't know. That's not important. Whoever wrote these tributes obviously knew Dan very well, and I don't think it's too far to say that they loved the man. So, can I read these two wee tributes? Unfortunately, they weren't read on the occasion of the unveiling of the memorial. So I'd maybe like to read them now, so that they are on record, especially as we're being filmed. Let's see if my old eyes can... First tribute said, Dan McMichael was Hibs' guiding star, and Hibs have lost a good friend in him, whose heart was in the club, who he has so long served. I never saw an approach to a smile on his face, and while I put it down to team worries, when all the time it was failing health, a malady slow and insidious that finally carried off Dan. Old eyes arguing it. When all the time it was failing health, a malady slow and insidious that finally carried him off. What actually carried Dan off was the worldwide flu epidemic that claimed, I think, somewhere 10 million lives, but as many as it claimed in the First World War. But he also had some kidney trouble as well, which unfortunately saw Dan depart this world. Dan was an excellent judge of a player, and so many good young ones passed through his hands, for he had not a Parkhead or an Ibrox backing financially. It must have been a heartbreaking job to keep the green flag flying at Easter Road these 14 years of his life. These 14 years being, of course, the 4 years of the First World War. The second tribute that I found says, "It is difficult to think of Easter Road without Dan. I never knew anyone who had a hard or unkind word to say of him, nor did I ever hear Dan speak harshly or ungenerously to any living creature. It would have been against his nature to have done so. True, he had his own way of doing things at times, and made mysteries when there need have been none. But that his heart was in the right place, no one who knew him could ever have doubted. There will never be anyone more zealous and conscientious for the welfare of Hibernian Football Club, for which it is not too much to say. He died as well as lived." He never thought of himself when it came to a case of doing something for the Hibs. Dan had come to be one of the institutions of the game in Edinburgh and Leith, and those who knew him could not help respecting him and liking him. There was something in the nature of the man, something kind and considerate, that made it so, and he was ever ready, even at personal inconvenience, to give the help he could to anyone. Many a real good player he was responsible for bringing to Easter Road, and got many good going sides together. They were always a happy family at Easter Road, directors, manager and players. There was nothing of the marionette about old Dan, but he knew better than many others whose discipline was far more severe, how to win not only respect, but affection of his men. Dan treated them with every consideration, and he regarded him more as a friend than a boss. Poor Dan, he was a good, kindly soul, and will be much missed by many. With Dan McMichael away, it would seem as if Easter Road would never quite be what it used to be. two wonderful tributes to him. And I don't think there was a Hibernian more worthy of the honour that St Patrick's Branch paid him. I would like to finish regarding Dan McMichael, just a wee couple of verses, which are quite appropriate when you consider where Dan's resting place is, in the brand new stadium there. Wonder what he would have thought of it all now, eh? You just wonder. But at the end of the First World War, we had a stand on the east side, and had very little attention, etc. It was known as the egg box. I wonder what he would think of the stadium now that Tom Farmer's given us. Anyway, the wee verse that says, "The peace I shall know, in green grass I found, resting at Easter Road, in the shadow of the holy ground. Hibernian Park, the green, the harp, and Erngo Bra, its four immortal blends, Dan McMichael, faith, hope, and charity, its four immortal friends." Anyway, that's enough for Dan at the moment. Hope you don't mind me adding that tribute to what you've already done for his memory. So, where was I? Yeah. Really, I just wanted to briefly say, unfortunately I wasn't involved in any way at all in your efforts for the remembrance of Dan McMichael. Not being on the internet or email, and everything seems to be conducted that way these days. I didn't even know what was going on. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but if you're doing something, everybody should know, because I'm sure everybody would want to make a contribution. I'm sure, especially for something as worthy as that. Anyway, I wasn't involved in any way whatsoever. I had small involvement in a few other things with the St Paul's branch. You know, there's a bronze bust of his co-founder, Canon Hannon. That's on display in the reception at Easter Road, and there's another bronze bust of the other co-founder, Michael Wheelahan. That's in the pipeline. That's, I think, it's done. Again, just part of people power. If you don't get on with it yourself, you'll just become a non-entity. So, also got involved in the centenary mass that was held for the 100 years, the death of Canon Hannon. That was very well attended in St Patrick's Church. Tom Farmer was there. At that time it was the Jim Gray and there was also a ceremony up in the Green Cemetery at Canon Hannon's graveside. You've got a very large memorial there. The 206 was the 150th anniversary of St Patrick's Church, and they had various little events covering the 150 years, and I was invited to give a talk there on the Hibernian connection with St Patrick's. That was a very good evening. It was very well attended as well. And also the same year, by sheer coincidence, we refurbished Canon Hannon's giant marble cross in the Grange Cemetery. Needed a wee bit of work after all these years. Again, these things are all part of people power. If we don't, if we don't even try and get something done for a famous five, could you believe, still thinking about it, something badly wrong. So it's really up to supporters to push along these things. I mean, I know myself, I for years, different changes and different regimes at Easter Road, pushed for years, why don't we get the proper club crest back? You don't see our friendly neighbours' hearts changing their crest.
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet.
Can I put them on?
But we've had various bits and pieces over the years, mostly hated by the supporters. And I'd like to think, because of the way I pushed on it with different regimes, kept at them time and time again, get a proper crest for this club that properly represents it. And it finally happened, thank God. As I say, people power. Right now, look back to why I think you asked me here. Is the trilogy of books, The Making of Hibernian. What I would like to do is make it very clear to every one of you that these books are the culmination of a purely personal hobby. Before I came up here, someone described me as a historian. I'm not a historian. I'm not a writer. I'm not anything. It was a purely personal hobby. And it was a sheer fluke that these ever got written. My brother, one day when he was visiting, saw me writing away and checking up things and that. He says, as I've been doing for years, he says, are you still doing that? I says, oh, aye. Hi, Jesus. He says, you better still do it. He says, you should write a book. If he hadn't said that, it would never even, wouldn't even have entered my head. Anyway, that's what brought about it. It ended up as three and not just one. Anyway, I never thought for one minute we would ever be anything published. The books are accurate. They are accurate from over the 30 years research I put into them. That was without the aid of the internet. I just went out and about to get the information first hand. So the books are what they are. Just an effort of I was Daft Larry. There was possibly if I'm maybe working on a fourth book. Might be able to use the internet a wee bit more. Gordon McCabe has been very helpful. He's used the internet, and I think he's got friends that use the internet. And he's given me some good information, which going out and about I may have had trouble trying to dig up. So the internet probably will have its uses. Anyway, I don't know if the good Lord will spare me for a fourth book, but we'll see. I'll tell you one thing, as I say, I never expected one book to be written, never mind three. And remember David Hardy, sports writer in the Edinburgh Evening News? He very kindly wrote 3 nice publicity articles before each book was just published. And he was surprised it went to 3. And he phoned me at the house. This was when the third book, when the third book was being was ready to go on sale. He was writing his article, but he phoned me at home. He says, look, he says, third book. He says, I wasn't expecting that, as I wasn't. He said, he says, in my article, he says, I've described you as a Hibs anorak. He says, I thought I'd better phone you to see if I should keep that in case you found it offensive. I assured him, I says, David, I says, no offence whatsoever. I says, I'm more than proud to be known as a Hibs anorak. I've been called a lot worse at Ibrox. Anyway, I think when Gordon first mentioned this talk to me, he said possibly you could give talk on how you started, or why you started, or whatever exactly. Well, as I've already said, it was purely a personal hobby. I started, I think I was about 13 or 14. My dad had taken me to Hibs games. I'd gone to some Hibs games myself. They were really keen on me. Late mother and father, God rest them, were very protective. You've got to a football match on your own, you know. But they, well, here, tell you, somebody, was it Gordon? You were asking me if I remembered my first game.
Right.
And I said, well, I was too young. I saw the famous 5, but I was too young to appreciate what I was saying. What I do remember, when I was quite young, I can't remember my age, it'd maybe be 8 or 9. My dad took me to a midweek floodlight game. It was the first floodlight game I had been to. That was the days, the big terrace and the big high pylons. It was a reserve game against Wraith Rovers. The crowd was 22,000. The crowd was 22,000. I'll never forget that night. The ink black sky, floodlights coming down on the beautiful green grassy pitch and these green jerseys running out in it. It was a magical moment I'll always treasure. So that was my first real memory, you could say, of that stuck with me. Folk got me started researching about the Hibs. And I'm not an expert researcher, that's another thing, by the way. You know, everybody, you're an expert in this, you do it. It was just after remember we beat Barcelona 3-2 in what was the Fair Cities Cup in these days. Magical game. Joe Harper, Bobby Kinloch, Tommy Preston. What did I say? Did I say Joe Harper? He was not a bad wee player for us as well. Cuffed Liverpool for us. Yeah, Joe Baker, what a player. Ronnie Simpson, of course, in goals. Anyway, it was after that game, went along with my dad, that I thought, what I first thought was, God, I've missed so much before this fantastic game. You see, I've missed so much before it. And I thought, what I wanted to do in my old boyish brain, you know, was, what you got the Hibs results, going away back. And that's what started, going right back in a library there, in Edinburgh, library there, just to collate results. But in doing that, I started to pick up snippets, and I got snippets of information from my dad. You know, I'd been talking to him about some of these early results I had found in the library and that. And he mentioned some of the players, some of the characters. Canon Hannon, Michael Pullen, founded in St. Pat's. My father came from what was Little Ireland, and he gave us some information. Of course, getting that information also in my own boyish way, I thought, well, who were they? Why were they? What were they doing in Edinburgh? What were they doing in Edinburgh? Because it opened up a whole vista of, the more questions you ask yourself, is of course the deeper you get into it. If I'd never asked myself these questions, you know, it would have just been a list of results. Sometimes wonder, you know, the time that I've spent. Anyway, besides the results, I started to find out more about the whole background to the club, you know. And my dad would give me a bit of background, but it was just fairly just what anybody probably knew. And that's how the amateur research all started. Libraries, the Catholic archives were able to give me a lot of information. And then I managed to find people, a lot of them were at games that used to run, old guys, you know. My father would point somebody, you know, he might not be able to tell you something, you know. And I would get more snippets of information and more names, and of course there was more questions. Who were these people that were being named, you know, etc., etc. I must say the libraries were a great source. There's another great source that I say was getting some old folks who had information. Now, one of these guys that I managed to speak to by sheer chance. I was married early. I was working 3 jobs for my wife to keep my wife and family going. I was working in a bar at night in Stockbridge, good old Stockery, and one of the customers, a heavy, have a wee blather with, and he suddenly says to me, he says, see that old guy over there? He says, that's, he wasn't a regular, this old fella, and he was old. He wasn't a regular, but he would come in for a pint now and again. He says, I'm sure that's Tommy Joyce. I says, oh, aye. His father played for the Hibs back in the 1870s and 1890s. Are you sure? So when I got a wee break, I pulled a pint and took it over for the old guy. Introduced myself, pardoned myself for interrupting him. Sure enough, he was Tommy Joyce. So I told him what I was doing, trying to find out information. Sure enough, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I could tell you as I went through the years, people that you could find who were directly involved all these years ago. I says, what can you tell me? Can't tell you much. You know, played for the Highways. I says, have you got any medals? Because there was quite a few medals going. Hibs were winning all the local competitions, you know, the East of Scotland Shield, and before that it was the Edinburgh Cup. He says, no, he says, really, he says, the only thing I've got left is this. And he pulled out an old battered wallet, and he pulled out, it was all folded up, an old picture. I've never seen it before, I've never seen it again. I think it's in book 1. I don't know what newspaper it came from. And there it was, and his father was in this picture with the cups and the shield in front of him. So that's how it all got started. Just a lot of it was luck running into people. A lot of it was asking questions, which I wouldn't have the nerve to do now, you know. But you know, I managed to, in fact, I wrote the forward to book 3. Couldn't believe it. I found Kathleen Houlihan, the youngest daughter of Michael Houlihan, the co-founder of the house. And our 2 nieces. 2 nieces lived in Portobello, not too far from where I lived at the time. And I was able to interview them. It's really quite incredible who you can find. Of course, Pat Stanton, he was able to give me some information, a wee bit of information for Jimmy O'Rourke. His family came from the Grass Market. My wife was able to give me a wee bit of information. She's actually a cousin of Pat's. What a fluke to marry a Christmas family. And my old mother-in-law, my wife's mother, who is now 94, still going strong, or strongish. Doesn't live too far from here in Leith. The family look after her. She, this was many years ago when she was a lot fitter. She, again, just as a passing remark, she says, you know, she used to, her childhood church was the Sacred Heart up in Lorison Place. And our old pal was a wifey called Jeannie Rutherford, who still lived there. She says, I think Jeannie has some connection with the Hibs. Oh, I've never said this before, you know. So anyway, it's absolutely brilliant, you know. I mean, I says, well, look, I says, if she's an old woman, which she was quite old. You come up with me, I didn't want to knock on her door to get her a heart attack, you know, or a hips attack. So anyway, we went up, introduced myself. And would you believe she was related, directly related to, God, you know, my head. Scored the first goal when we won the Scottish Cup. It was Phil Clark. Phil Clark. She was related directly to Phil Clark. What can you tell me about Phil Clark? So she had a few memories. Just, you know, I can do better than you a few memories. So she showed me some photographs of them. And the next thing I knew, she brought out this tray full of medals that he had won. I couldn't believe it. Whereas the condition of them, you'd think they had just been struck that morning. Some of them were even in coloured enamel. Absolutely beautiful. Also included the medal he got, the Scottish Cup win in 1887. So again, it's amazing just the things you find when you go about it. I mean, I would never have thought for a minute that you were going to get people, you know, like Kathleen, little Kathleen Phelan, still alive. You know, that was a fairer that co-founded it, her little Jeannie Rutherford, with all Phil Clark's medals. If I did the money, I would have tried to buy them, but you know, not for a selfish reason, but because what was bothering me was that what's going to happen to them. And she says she'd be leaving them. She would be leaving to her niece, you know. Of course, you know. I mean, I never said I wanted to buy them. This was in my head. I was thinking, what's going to happen to these medals, you know? She's going to leave them to her niece, but which is fair enough, leave them in the family. But my heart sank when she told me her niece lived in the Isle of Arden. Now, are they still there? I don't know. There should be an Easter Road Museum, that's where they should be. Absolutely fantastic collection. So that's just be bits and pieces on how I went about putting together the story. I'll say a lot of library information, which I suppose is really freely available to anybody if you want to look for it. You know where to find it. There's also the National Library. I got in there, luckily I thought they would throw a wee scruff like me out, you know. Got in there, I had to wear white gloves to go through their manuscripts and annuals and what have you, you know. Also went to the Mitchell Library in Glasgow. Got a lot of good information there which wasn't available in Edinburgh. And I think there's a lot more in London which isn't available in Edinburgh, would you believe? To show you how much of an amateur I am, I've never bothered to make the trip to London to find it. You maybe write another book on what's down there, you know. Try to remember what's the name of the library down there. They should have anyway some additional information, if nothing else. Can't remember, I'm getting old really. It's written down somewhere. Anyway, saying it would be a short talk, that was it folks. It was just 30 years of Leith perseverance. Yeah, well, aye. persevere. I managed to get information from St Patrick's Church. They had some information. They said that they'd lost a lot of stuff in a fire. A few years before I was making my inquiries, I got information from St Mary's Star of the Sea in Leith. And got a wee bit of information from St Mary's Cathedral. But as I say, it's just a matter of persevering and finding out everything you can. And then, when the thought of a book was to be written, you then had to collate all the bits and pieces and put it into a book form. It turned out I had to do it for 3.
4 nearly.
It was quite a task, but it was a labour of love. In fact, even some of the information that the likes of Gordon McCabe has given me recently puts a wee bit more flesh on some of the bones of the book, and you could almost, well, not rewrite them, but you could put a lot more information into them. It's not going to change the story, it's maybe just make it a wee bit more interesting. With some characters, you know, lists of where they lived. You know, it's strange little things. Who was it? Who was it that lived with? Was it Michael Whelan? He lived in College Wynd, and he lived with.
He married Marie Stanton and Owen Quinn.
Oh, he never married Marie Stanton. Michael Whelan. Michael Whelan married Isabella Roberts.
Sorry.
That's right. There's a first time for everything, Gordon.
Did he know have a bed or a room with another Hibs player?
Owen Quinstein.
Owen Quinn, early Hibs player. Now, it's a wee thing, I didn't know that, for instance, that they had shared the same address. And Gordon gave me that. He's given me lots of little tidbits. The thing is, there's a saying. It refers to Little Ireland, which was where all the Irish immigrants were in the Cowgate and the Grassmarket, Candlemakers Row and the Westport. The saying refers to them, but it could also refer exactly the same to trying to research the Hibs, because I've done a lot of research on the Edinburgh Irish, which was absolutely fascinating. Whether that'll ever come to anything, I don't know. It says, no one could ever hope to tell all the story of Little Ireland, not even the story of a single wind in it. Same with Hibs history. You could never hope to tell the whole story. I think it just may be too difficult. So you can only do what you can do. The internet and the help of Gordon has put a wee bit more flesh on some of the bones of people. It's not going to make a vast difference to the story, but it's definitely going to make it just a wee bit more interesting. People living in places like College Wynd. Sandy McMahon lived in just round the corner for the Catholic Institute in Hangsgate. What was it? Anyway, Sandy McMahon, one of Hibs' greatest ever players. I think he's in the Hall of Fame at Hampden. he was known as the Duke, the sand dancer. Genius player. Him and Willie Groves played together, can you believe that? Eh? Willie Groves, probably the biggest football genius Scotland has ever produced. Again, in the Hall of Fame at Hampden. But you just found out these things. Things that have been long forgotten, and you know, I suppose if I hadn't done it, it'd maybe be forgotten forever. The publisher, when they first went for the way, I said, they didn't know if the books would sell at all. And I didn't either. I mean, it was old, especially book 1 was very old history. Book 2 was pretty old history as well. And they were as surprised as I was. They printed 2,000 books in the first run, and they were sold out in 1 week. People are interested in this sort of thing. So they reprinted the book again in hardback, and they reprinted it in a softback. They done book 2 and book 3 in hardback. They didn't do any softbacks on them, but they brought out 3 recently. Publisher. See, it moved from the original publisher was John Donald, and they retired and sold the business to a firm called Berlin, which is an old style British book. Berlin. It's not Berlin. Berlin. Somebody thought it was a German publisher. Anyway. They've done 3 in softback. So again, they must still be proven popular. I mean that must be what, a good 10, 12 years ago that they first came out, and they still seem to be selling. So again, in my own small, modest way, without realising it, people power that brought this to a whole load of supporters that would probably never have had it. It was a pity, actually. There was 2 authors before me who wrote, I don't know if you've ever read it or seen it, called 100 Years of Hibs.
Yeah.
It was brought out for the centenary in 1975. Phil Thompson, who I know very well, and Jerry Docherty. Phil, I believe, sometime in his life, was a headmaster of a Perth school. Probably a bit more qualified than the likes of myself for doing what we've done. I don't know what Jerry Docherty did, but anyway, the two of them more or less did what I had done, but they had done it earlier, was to get try and get a proper history of the club for their centenary. And like myself, they had, you know, enough foolscap pages to choke a horse. I mean, my books all had to be edited down. The first book was edited really a lot. So they went along to Tom Hart, who is this is what Phil's story is anyway. Went along to Tom Hart, who was the chairman of Hibernian, and an excellent chairman that he was, Tom Hart. He was born and bred Hibbie. And they put it to him about getting the book published for the centenary. and hod with the remark, Hib supporters don't read books. So, Phil and Jerry's book, The 100 Years of Hibs, is well interesting. It's an absolute shadow of all the work that they have done, because the finished article was massacred because Hib supporters don't read books. Jerry, they pulled off a brilliant stroke. They got Mark Busby to write the forward. Mark Busby, of course, had played for the Hibs. As Michael Caine would say, a lot of people don't know that. He played for the Hibs for several years. That was during the Second World War. And he actually came from a Hibs supporting family for the west of Scotland, somewhere in Lanarkshire. Mining family. And Hibs manager at that time was Willie McCartney. And Willie McCartney was famous for his McCartney babes. He was a great believer in developing young players. No going out and spending a lot of money. Develop your own players, get them at the ground, get them trained, get the whole spirit of the club into them, get the best football you can out of them. And Mark Busby, when he became a manager of the mighty Manchester United, on his own admission, he copied Willie McCartney's idea. And that's how you ended up with the Busby Babes. It was, his inspiration was Willie McCartney, Hibs manager. You know, you wonder if the Second World War hadn't intervened, you just wonder what Willie McCartney might have done with the Hibs team. You know, took eight off the Rangers there. Can't be bad. Shame about Ibrox and Tynecastle now, Dear, what a shame, oh well, never mind. So I don't know, does anybody want to ask me any questions, because, as I say, trying to tell you how the books came about, it was just a hobby, slogging, because I was Hibs daft, simple as that. And the more I found out, the more interested I got in personalities, the whys and the wherefores and the whens, you know. And there was certainly never a thought of anything being published. Personal hobby. And like many things that happen by a fluke.
Oh, good question. Did you have any problems with keeping the timeline, you know?
No, I was very,
Getting them mixed up,
that was the one thing I always found from a very early age, you know, early time starting, that I wanted to stick to a very fine timeline. Didn't want things overlapping. So no, now other people may do things other ways, but no, I stuck to timeline. 1875, 76, 77, 78. I didn't try to jump about, you know, because a player was with the club for 10 years, I didn't jump 10 years forward to say more about him. When we came to maybe when it was time to hang up his boots, then that was mentioned. I didn't mix up the dates, at least I tried not to, as much as possible, to make it easy, because Hibs supporters don't read. Had to make it 3 bears, you know, 3 bears language.
Alan, what's your happiest moment, if you had a happy memory that you had to say about watching the Hibs, just a moment in a Hibs game where you just felt as complete as you can feel? What would it be?
I would probably say that would be the 7-0 game Tynecastle. No, it was so unexpected, you know, after years of 0-0 draws, you know. And, there was this Hearts supporter in front of us, and he kept looking round us. See, look at it, you know, we were all bedecked in green, of course. And he got right up to the gate, ready just to go in, and he had one last look over his shoulder. He says, I don't think my mates are coming. He says, do you want this, lads? And he handed us this big bloody carry out.
So that was the happiest moment.
Changed days, eh?
Alan, can I ask you a question, please? Are there any plans to bring out your books in an electronic format? I mean, I've actually got the 3 hardback editions of your book, but to be
Right.
honest with you, when I go on holiday, I like to take electronic books on my tablet, you know, abroad to read. And I know for a fact, having read forums in the past as well, there's a lot of Hib supporters who would be really happy if your books actually did come out in that sort of format. Plus, you were saying you've got some extra stuff that maybe you could expand on book 1 or whatever. It might be an idea, if that was going to happen, that you put this additional stuff actually into the e-book format.
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, you're talking a foreign language.
Eddie, you did the job. Can you thought that might be your answer?
I'm not on the internet, I don't have a mobile phone, I don't have email, I don't have iPods. I'm what you call a Luddite. Do you know what a Luddite is? Yes. You know what a Luddite is? They were people who resisted the Industrial Revolution, you know.
It would
So,
appear there's an
how-
extra market there for you. That's the only point
See,
I'm making.
It would be up to the publisher. I mean, I don't have any say in these things.
But surely you could approach the publisher for argument's sake and saying, you know, I mean, I would have to say if your book had sold in thousands in the past, which I know for a fact it has because I've got them, I mean, there is another market out there when it's electronic, and basically it allows people to then read your books on the computer, on a laptop, you know, on a tablet, even on their mobile phones if that's the way that they want to do it.
Sure.
People power. People power again.
People
Yeah,
are-
anyway.
Again, does a book publisher want to put things out that way?
Yes.
I don't know.
Amazon.
Oh. All the books that come out today are either, they always give them out in a paper format, but they also do it in an electronic format as well.
Maybe they have.
No, your books are not out in an electronic format. I've tried to buy them and I can't buy them.
There's a question up here as well. Sorry, just
I
a
mean,
question for you up here, Alan.
I could ask, but the thing is, I would be asking in ignorance because I wouldn't
Eddie,
even
you're
know
the man.
what you're talking about.
I'll speak to you.
I've got an idea what you're talking
I'll speak
about,
to you about it.
But yeah, I mean, I'm surprised. I'm surprised the publisher hasn't done it. I mean, was it just last year? They reprinted 3 of them.
Yeah.
Why didn't they put it out on?
Who can say?
His
You know.
supporters
Electronic.
didn't read.
Hmm?
His supporters didn't read.
Another wee question for you, Alan.
No, I was just wondering, who's your all-time favourite then?
Player. I mean, that I've seen.
Your personal favourite player?
Wow.
Over.
Pat Stanton
Hey.
always stands out. To me, is one of the greats. He, you know who helped to make him into a great, I think, anyway, was Joe Steen when he was manager of his. I mean, Pat's favourite player. And he played in, in the early 70s, played in a great Hibs team, great players, entertainment, you know. Peter Cormack was another player that I liked. I thought he was a fantastic player. Doesn't get enough credit. Pat's favourite, certainly his favourite teammate, was Alec Cropley. He rated him above himself. You know. Again, goal-scoring hat-trick heroes, you know. Alan Gordon one week, Jimmy Root the next.
You're following that team.
Don't get them like that these days.
Alan, sorry, another question. Mark?
Alan, I can't believe it's 8 years since we were at St. Pat's with your talk. You've surpassed yourself the night. There was over 200 folk there that night. And I mind you saying to me, is there anybody going to come tonight? And there was 200 folk in St. Pat's Church that night, 8 years ago.
I didn't think it was enough for you.
I quite think that Gordon, there's a wee bit of snippet information that Gordon's got that he's not telling you, that St Mary's gave Hibs a loan a way back with Philip Farmer and they want the money back. But all these years that you've done the research, and was there one eureka moment that you say to yourself that you had been searching and you'd never got information from anybody, and then all of a sudden you found it in a paper or you found it through talking to someone? Is there one moment that you really want to find?
Probably would be to single out one. It would probably have to be old Kathleen Wheeler, who was Michael Wheeler's youngest daughter. I think she was 94 when she died. I just managed to get her. She got away.
Know the players that you've seen and know the players that we even ourselves lucky after seeing. Who in the history that you would like to have seen play? Who's a player that you'd love to have met, or an official you would love to have met?
Well, I would certainly love to have met Darling Willie Groves. Probably alongside Sandy McMahon and another player of genius that Hibs had in a time, had the three of them, a guy called James Blessington. Probably players like that, but you've gone way back. Talking about favourite players, you know, and it goes without saying, Pat Stanton will always be my favourite from my day, but Joe Baker, you know, will be George Best. Yeah, even he was at the end of his career, and his body had probably been pretty wasted with drink. God, could he still play? You know what surprised me when I saw George Best was his strength. You know, some way he must have really looked after himself. And I loved it when we were playing Rangers. I think Big Tony Higgins, there's another guy. Oh, I love Big Tony. Well, they should have him on the board at Easter Road. Yeah. That would be Pat Nevin, he'd stir them up. I remember, I think it was a game against Rangers at Easter Road, and Tony Higgins scored a lovely goal after even lovelier play by George Best, and I think we beat Rangers 2-1 that night, and the Rangers supporters weren't too happy, and this, there's a surprise. Anyway, somebody threw this bottle on the park, aimed at George Best. So Bestie just picks it up and pretends to drink it. But although he was coming to the end of his career, George Best still impressed me a lot. Anyway, what about goalkeepers? What about Laurie Leslie, Ronnie Simpson? Some good goalkeepers the other day, with some bummers as well. But do you remember Jackie Wren? Jack Wren. Aye.
He got a graph for Australia, do you know?
That's right. He went off to Australia.
Come on, professional golfer.
Aye, look, it's the old story, the reminiscences you can pull out the hat. That was how I got a lot of stuff. A lot of the reminiscences that I got when I was trying to put some flesh and bones on these on the book. I would say a good 95% I really had to kind of get a second confirmation of it. Because people's memories sometimes know what they should be. And I know that only too well myself. But yeah, I mean, a night like tonight, if you were researching a book, you could use some of what was said tonight in a book. That's what you do. You get things first hand from people. Anyway, any more questions? Because
maybe we should.
it's way past my bedtime.
If we could maybe just round it up with one last question. Anybody got a question for Alan? One last question.
Oh, well, just quickly, although he wasn't at Hibs a long time, I still think that the Hibs supporters really liked him, took him to the heart. Was Frank Sauzet? What was your opinion of him?
Aye, Frank. He was certainly a surprise signing for the Hibs. I think he was wonderful. I thought he struck up a great partnership with he's a big Norwegian guy. Pat Lane. What was his first name again? Mixon. See, I tell you, man, that's not that long ago now. Aye.
I'm sorry to do this, but
wait, no, a joke.
You can always finish on a joke.
Just when they mentioned that there was
Wait, the cameras, go to the cameras.
Name half a dozen Scottish footballers whose names you associate with money. You know, and remember there was a goalkeeper called Campbell Money, and there was various others, and nobody could get, I can't remember other name, nobody could get the sixth one. And the sixth one was Mitzi put my line on it.
I think maybe
Mitzi put my line on it.
Me to close the meeting. Thank you very much all for coming. As we said, remember, next meeting, let's all try and be here. Thanks very much.
Thank you.